Out of everything they could have messed up in Star Trek Starfleet Academy, the biggest offense to me is the way in which they gave us the only black male character in the show. Yeah, we gotta talk about Jadine.
My name is Jaden.
I know, I just really don't like you. First of all, let me be clear. Starfleet Academy fails Jaden not because he's soft or queer or different, but because the writing strips both Klingon culture and the black-clothed strength of depth and replaces it with aesthetic signals instead of earned character development. Now, I'm not the biggest Trekkie fan in the universe, but I am definitely a Klingon guy. Give me honor, give me warrior philosophy, give me dramatic speeches in torch-lit halls. That's where the nerd in me lives. Love Viking stuff, samurai stuff, Spartan stuff. So, in a franchise that gave us Captain Benjamin Sisko, played by Avery Brooks, a commanding, spiritual, layered black man who wasn't apologizing for his presence in Star Trek DS9, I have certain expectations. So when I saw Jaden Cragg, a young Klingon cadet in Starfleet Academy, I was excited. Because Klingons done right, that's elite. With this black aesthetic, alright, let's see what happens. When you saw Worf, played by Michael Dorn, next to Sisko, who holds it down as one of the greatest black presence in sci-fi history to date, expectations are high whether you want them to be or not. But even then, I expected something. But here's the issue. Jaden doesn't feel right. First off, Jaden is pretty black-coded. His name is Jaden, not Korvac, not Mortok, not something guttural and ancient. 1,000 years later, and they call him Jaden. Really? And he talks like this all of the time, withholding his voice. I don't know why. It's stupid. Then you gave him dreadlocks. And he comes well equipped with the classic heavy, traumatic, abandoned by his father trauma storyline. I mean, could you be any more stereotypical? Black man abandoned by his father. I mean, I guess being abandoned by his fathers isn't necessarily stereotypical. Now, these aren't a lot, granted, but I think it's enough to get the point across to see the signal that they're sending out. He feels aesthetically coded to signal to black people. So visually, he reads black, but culturally, he doesn't even read Klingon. What am I watching right now? When you look at him, he doesn't actually feel like an alien from a completely different quadrant of the galaxy. He feels human, even though he spent little to no time with them at all. When you only give the audience one black-coded male character, you don't get to be careless with how you frame him. And that's what I feel here. If you wanted a black queer character, great. A softer Klingon? Okay, interesting. A sensitive male lead? Fine. But why stack every identity signal into the single black-coded slot that you got? Instead of expanding representation, you compressed it. Again, queerness isn't bad. Breaking stereotypes isn't bad either. You can be soft. But when the only black-coded warrior in the room is also the least warrior-like presence in the room, you're gonna get friction there. Not because people hate vulnerability, but because it feels like something was removed instead of added. In many black communities, strength is part of the self-image. Shaped by struggle, strength and resilience, these are core to our self-image. Sometimes to our own detriment, maybe yes, but it's there regardless and you can't ignore it. Take a look at rap culture. Look at our history. The black community sees ourselves as fighters, warriors ourselves. Rap culture, sports stuff, struggle narrative. The idea of being fighters is inherent because historically we had to be. So when the black-coded Klingon from the warrior race is framed primarily as soft and fragile and very emotional, it clashes with cultural psychology. He doesn't feel like a new form of strength. He feels like the subtraction of it. And I believe that's why black nerds, myself included, are kind of tired of this particular character. Now, let's talk about how Jaden doesn't even really feel like a Klingon either. Klingons aren't just aggressive aliens. They're warrior philosophers. Honor, lineage, ritual, pride, consequences. I'm not the biggest Trekkie like I said before, and even I can recognize this. So why can't the writers? That culture isn't like background noise. It's foundational to the species across Star Trek. It's more than just stew.
That is warrior stew. Only those who have served their house in battle can taste it.
But Jaden doesn't feel shaped by that culture regardless of his sexual orientation. Take away the forehead ridges and what's left? A teen drama character who happens to be in space. He doesn't feel like a Klingon evolving. He feels like a human wearing Klingon makeup. Honestly, he feels like a black man in Klingon face. And here's the bigger issue. If the goal of the show is a softer Klingon that's actually interesting, where's the friction? Is it just because his family abandoned him? Obviously that's painful, but I'm looking for like some cultural pushback here. Where is the struggle between old warrior traditions and the modern personal ideals? In Star Trek DS9, changes wasn't just handed to you, it was earned. The Ferengi, for example, were deeply sexist at first. Women couldn't even wear clothes, couldn't earn profit. Through Quark and Rom and Nog and Moogie, over seasons, you saw resistance, embarrassment, conflict, growth had a cost. Pretty much every single time they tried to push the agenda forward, some kind of backlash happened to turn it back. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But that was good storytelling.
Rage makes our kills more satisfying. Unless we find an opponent who humbles us. I believe your father honored the hunt the only way he knew how, by recognizing your victory.
Here, the change feels fully formed. The abandonment was actually acceptance, and his sexuality, well, that was never even a conflict to begin with. Seeing as Klingons are super open these days about everything, even sharing their spouses. Where's the storyline leading up to this cultural change that they've gone through? No resistance, no cultural consequences, no tension. And it's not to say I'm looking for this all to happen in one season, but I am looking for groundwork. When Worf struggled between Klingon honor and Starfleet duty, you felt it. When Sisko navigated faith, command, and fatherhood, it felt layered. This does not. Jaden feels detached from Klingon history completely, rather than in conflict with it. And when you strip away alien culture in a space opera, what do you have? Now, this isn't just about the one character, by the way. This is telling a larger issue in nerd media, if I can say that. There's a pattern that many black fans, I think, are noticing, because I'm definitely noticing it. Black male characters in nerd media are increasingly softer, more emotionally fragile, less commanding, less physically dominant. Let's take Finn from Star Wars. Despite being a fully trained Star Trooper, the guy is frequently in a panic and flight mode rather than fight at all. Or Cleveland Booker from Discovery, Star Trek Discovery. The man is an empath, okay, who can telepathically connect with nature and creatures, a power rooted in sensitivity rather than force. And from what I gather, my last example, which granted I don't have a lot of this, I ended up stop watching this, which really sucks because Doctor Who was my favorite sci-fi show of all time. But Ncuti Gatwa, if that's how you say his name, his iteration of the Doctor is openly affectionate, flamboyant, and very emotionally transparent. Again, nothing is wrong with softness. I don't hate any of these characters, but where's the variety? When softness becomes the default in the only slot that you got, it's alienating, which is supposed to be the opposite of what this show is supposed to represent. People, audience connection is about balance. Where is the balance? Don't preach, guide. You can teach and stop giving us all the answers. If a group sees strength as part of its identity and you want to borrow from that, especially a group shaped by struggle, removing that archetype without replacing it with something equally powerful is going to create a problem. And I think that's what you have here. It doesn't feel like it's evolution. It feels like you've removed something, like you've erased something. And I think it's clear with the ratings, it's just not really working. Now, let's be fair. Here's why someone might actually like this direction. right? Showing vulnerability in a warrior race is new ground. Younger audiences may connect more with the emotional expression, and Klingon culture evolving 1,000 years later does make sense in some kind of way. It needs to evolve in some kind of way. All of that is valid. The idea isn't wrong. It's the execution that feels very underdeveloped. No explanation as to why things are the way they are now or where they came from and how difficult that was, because without friction, vulnerability has absolutely no weight whatsoever. Without cultural resistance, evolution feels just sort of thrown in there. And artificial representation, which is what this is starting to feel like, is just, say it with me now, pandering. And this is not to say Star Trek hasn't pushed boundaries before, because we all know it has. In Star Trek, the original series, you had Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Aurora share one of TV's first ever interracial kiss at the height of civil rights tension. You had Aurora, Sulu, and Chekhov standing on the bridge during the Cold War, projecting a future beyond nationalism. In DS9, gave us a same-sex kiss in 1995. This is a series that is about taking risks, about progressing things forward, but it does it in so much of a smarter way, or it did do it in so much of a smarter way. And it worked. It worked because the writing had weight. And looking outside of Star Trek, we have Captain Jack Harkness in Doctor Who, played by John Barrowman, openly bi, flirtatious, heroic, confident. Again, it worked because the character had presence.
So there's 3 of you?
3 doctors.
I can't tell you what I'm thinking right now.
Masculinity wasn't removed, it was expanded. Now that's the difference. If you take away Klingon warrior culture, if you soften them into emotional humanoids with ridges, you lose the alienness. You lose that understanding, that ability to compromise, that ability to find balance between races. You lose the clash of cultures that make a space opera interesting in the first place. You actually lose the message of cultural understanding and finding common ground.
I'm going to take care of this. Klingons make great warriors, but terrible doctors.
Then all you're left with is a bunch of humans with prosthetics. And that's boring. Actually, it's not boring. It's just not what it is. It's just not what the show is. Wrapping up, do I hate Starfleet Academy? No, I don't hate Starfleet Academy. I do see how some people could enjoy this show. There are some fun moments. But do I love it? Absolutely not. It feels like a teen streaming show wearing a Star Trek uniform. Jaden could have been incredible. Imagine a young Klingon struggling between ancient honor and modern identity, which is what the character is supposed to be, but he doesn't have anything about really Klingon in him, to be honest. I want to see a warrior learning vulnerability without losing his edge. Imagine a black-coded character who is dominant, disciplined, and emotionally complex. Instead, we have something about soup, I think. Like, is that evolution or misunderstanding your audience? Is Jaden bold representation or a character built to pander? Let me know. Listen, I am open to hearing other people's criticisms about this video itself, but about Jaden. Whether you like him or hate him, what do you think about Jaden himself? Is he a good representation? Or should there have been more of a balance? Maybe bring in another character that could have been the one to balance out the gay black character. You tell me. Does he work for you, or does he feel like a Klingon who left his bat'leth at home? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to comment, like, share this out, and until next time, what's the best recent film you've seen?